The San Jose Sharks rebuild continues, but is this the year it starts to bear fruit? JD Young of Locked On Sharks is here to discuss the path forward and a lot more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Sharks, JD Young. And JD, interesting offseason for the Sharks. What, in your mind, was the best move that the team made this offseason?
We'll stick to free agents because the best move was drafting Michael Misa, which was the easiest move. But we'll stick to free agency and kind of what the Sharks did this year. And I think for them trying to add some more NHL caliber players, especially along the blue line, they signed Dmitry Orlov. They signed John Klingberg. They claimed Nick Leddy off of waivers from the St. Louis Blues, trying to bolster up this blue line, which was horrific last year, especially with Yaroslav Askarov expecting to be the full-time NHLer this year, right? And not kind of putting Askarov in the situation where you're having to play against just poor defensemen that we've seen over the past couple of seasons. Now, you know, all those guys do have their questions, right? Orlov looks like he might be kind of losing a bit of a step. Klingberg hasn't been able to stay healthy over the past couple of seasons. And Nick Leddy, who had some injury issues last year and clearly wasn't himself, like all these guys do have questions. But if two of the three work out, like this is going to be a much better defense than what San Jose trotted out last year, with the exception of maybe like Jake Wallman. So I think that just trying to kind of revamp the defense on the fly here and not locking yourself into any long-term contracts. All the defensemen other than Orlov are entering the last year of their deals. So if like they need to jettison one, it's not the end of the world type of thing. And even Orlov is only signed for 2 seasons. So I think revamping the blue line on the fly is going to make a big difference for San Jose this year.
And what move that they made in the offseason to you was a head scratcher?
Easily the Ryan Reeves trade. Henry Thrun, who, you know, probably didn't have a future with San Jose, and he's probably going to be that kind of borderline NHL, AHL type of tweener player. But Ryan Reeves, I know he provides some grit or snarl or whatever you want to say, but the dude's fought like once last year. He plays like 8 minutes a night, and he's a bit of a progress stopper, and you could be giving that lineup opportunity to somebody else. So it wasn't my favorite move. I know they're trying to protect Celebrini and Smith and some of the young players, but when you have a guy who plays 8 minutes a night and then opens the door for his teammates for the other 52, that really was not my favorite move. We'll see. Again, he's in the last year of his deal, and who cares? And the Sharks needed to hit the cap floor, so his contract does help that a little tiny bit. So
you talked about Michael Misa and some of the prospects. Which one of them do you think makes an impact this year?
I think the big question for the Sharks this year is or at least heading into training camp, is can both Michael Misa and Sam Dickinson make the team? Michael Misa was a second overall pick this year. We'll start with him. I think he makes the team because he's just too good to go back to juniors, right? And I think he's a cleaner prospect than what Will Smith was even after a year of college. I think right now Michael Misa is a better prospect than Will Smith was at this time last year. And we saw how the Sharks were able to kind of navigate Will Smith last year, where the first half of the season, like, he didn't play back-to-backs, hit development days, et cetera, et cetera. And then the second half of the year, in the last 34 games, he had 30 points. Only Mac Celebrini had one more point than him during that time. So I think they'll be able to kind of navigate that with Misa, and with as a forward, it's a little bit easier to kind of hide him. He can probably start on the third line, and then, you know, as he kind of gets more comfortable and kind of jump up into the top 6. Sam Dickinson is a tough one, right? Because he went back last year. He had an amazing season with London. He was the OHL Defenseman of the Year. He was the CHL Defenseman of the Year. He helped lead London to a OHL championship and a Memorial Cup. And he's done basically everything you can in juniors, but he's in that unfortunate situation where he's already signed his ELC last year and he can't go to college. He's not old enough to play in the AHL. So it's either OHL or the NHL. And it's much tougher to hide a 19-year-old defenseman than it is to hide a forward. So he's the intriguing one. I think the Sharks are going to give him every opportunity to win a job and not just pass the 9 games, but stick around this year in the NHL, because I think if he goes back to the juniors, he's just going to, it's going to be like a big fish in a small pond. And he's just going to he's going to, I don't want to say waste a year, but it kind of feels like he's going to waste a year back in juniors. So those are the 2 guys who I'm really intrigued to see if they can make the team out of camp. As for some of the other prospects like Igor Chernyshov's, Quentin Musty, I expect those guys to spend some time in the AHL before making their NHL debut, probably later on in the season, to be honest. So,
is there one thing in your mind that Dickinson needs to work on to improve in order to successfully stay in the NHL this year?
For him, it's always it's that processing speed, and you could see it in the juniors and stuff. But and he got better as the season went on. But like processing the speed at the NHL level, the only way to get better at that is to play NHL games, right? So like he's not going to be able to kind of work on that in the OHL because the speed of the game just isn't anywhere near the NHL. So that for me is the thing that he needs to work on. Like he skates beautiful. He's like a great skater. He's 6'3", 210 pounds, like as a 19-year-old kid. Like I think he's physically mature enough to hang around, and I think his skating will get him out of trouble. But sometimes he does like try to do a little bit too much. And that's always kind of the case with young players as they make that move to the NHL is what can I get away with in the NHL that I could get away with in the OHL or the whatever. But like, I think for him is that processing speed, but unfortunately, like he's not going to be able to really improve that until he plays against bigger, faster, tougher competition. So
yeah, got to do it to prove you could do it.
Got to do it. Yep.
Exactly. So what are the realistic expectations for the Sharks this year? It will be a successful season if
I think we'll start with the win-loss column. I think if this team is just like you can't be the worst team in the NHL again, right? You cannot three-peat. I know Florida's going for their three-peat. We're trying to avoid a three-peat over here. You cannot be the worst team in the NHL again, because I think if you are the worst team in the NHL, it leads to a lot of questions, right? And especially with Askarov, who you paid a small bounty for to get from Nashville last year. You let him kind of marinate one more season. It's supposed to be his time, right? And he's supposed to be your answer in goal. If he's not, and that's probably leads to you losing a lot of games this year. So I think if the Sharks are a team that's, maybe they finished with 52 points last year. If you're like that 65-70, like a 20-point jump, I think that's a successful season for them. And of course, the development of the young players, right? If Celebrini can continue to take the steps he can, if Will Smith can solidify himself as a top 6, center. Right now, they're going to try him at center. So if he can be a center this year, if not, if he needs to move back to wing, kind of have some answers there. But like, you can't be the worst team in the NHL. So my hope is this team kind of makes that like a Ducks-like jump. Where instead of picking the worst team in the NHL, maybe you're like 8th, 9th worst in the NHL, and you start to have a lot of more answers than you do have questions going into next offseason.
And then to be a playoff contender in another year, 2 years? Where are we at?
I think then you kind of going into next offseason where the Sharks will have a ton of cap space again. They can be aggressive. You can start to add. You feel like you have your core with Eklund and Celebrini and Smith and hopefully Dickinson and all these other guys. And then you can start to add some longer-term veteran guys where you're not just adding guys for a year or two to kind of fill in the roster, guys who you can think can contribute and start to kind of push. So the hope is, right, you make kind of a Ducks-like jump this year, and then next year maybe you're starting to kind of flirt with the wild card spot that was that 26-27 season. So.
All right, we'll see how that works out. JD, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Of course, you can listen and watch wherever you get podcasts. Watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at MyFryHole.
All right, JD, thanks so much.
Always a pleasure, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits the way I like to bet. You can use player props. You could put together a same-game parlay or even jump in live as the action unfolds, and it makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com. Check it out today.